Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another range report. Now today's range report is going to be a little bit different than the ones I normally do. Often I show you a gun that I'm about to shoot, give you guys my initial impressions, show some shooting videos, show you what I discover, and then give you guys my final thoughts. Well, today it's going to be different because we are also going to unbox this gun. This gun was sent to me by Lone Wolf distributors. They have come out with a whole series of Glock-19 clones, and this specifically is the LTD9 on their Timberwolf frame and has their version 2 slide. I asked for it also to be in the silver color with the stainless steel slide and barrel. But we're going to unbox this. Now this has been sent to the channel for free. Anytime I do any type of review on a product that I receive, I am always upfront and honest with you guys about the terms. I am receiving no other compensation for this review besides getting to try out this pistol. I get no money, no kickback codes. If you buy it or not, it does not affect me at all. So I always want to give you guys that information so you guys can decide whether or not it affects the review and makes me biased. So they have sent this pistol in for review. We are going to unbox it. I will then give you my initial thoughts. Then we're going to take it to the range and then I'll give you guys my final thoughts. But let me adjust the camera. We're going to unbox this and see what comes with the Lone Wolf Glock-19 clone, the LTD19. Alright, so here's the box. It was shipped in. It looks like they purchased these boxes from the same people that supply the boxes to SIG. I believe I have these same types of latches on some of my older SIG boxes. But I do like how it is branded with their name. That's just painted on. Looks very nice. Let's open this thing up. There is the pistol. We'll put this aside for just a moment because I believe under here we get a few other things. Of course, you get a lock. You get an extra back strap here. This one looks curved, where I know this one is straight. You get some swag here. It looks like you get a Velcro patch, your instruction manual, and it looks like I get 2 stickers, and that's it. So I guess you only get 1 magazine with this thing. Let me get these stickers out of here. And the back strap. And here is the pistol. All right, so let's take a look at this. I have to say that I am really impressed with how this thing looks. Now, this is supposed to be a Glock clone that's supposed to be kind of a mid-tier. I don't think that they're trying to compete with Zev or maybe Shadow Systems, but something above a Glock OEM and maybe below those really high-end Glock clones. So they try to make an attractive pistol that is feature-packed, but also has a few basic things on it that they expect you to upgrade, such as the sights, which looks like these are just basic old Glock plastic sights. And of course, those are easily replaced, and there are tons of options in the aftermarket for those. And they also leave in their stock trigger. So this is supposed to be kind of their mil-spec trigger or their standard trigger for Glock. So if you want to go with a flat face or some type of Apex trigger or a CNC trigger, you can do that and easily drop it in. But it comes with a pretty stock and very useful type of combat trigger. And we're going to test that out in just a moment as well. The magazine that comes with it is a Glock OEM magazine. In this case, because I live in a free state, it is a 15-round capacity. And as far as I can tell from just examining the outside, the only thing that is Glock on this is the magazine and the sights. Maybe the slide stop, but that looks a little bit different. Now, one of the things that Lone Wolf has been doing for many years is creating custom Glock parts. And so now they're trying to make a complete gun here in the United States. So right now I am really happy with how this has turned out. The silver polymer here looks very nice. It feels very rigid. I really like all of the cuts and all the milling that they did on the slide. The only thing that looks like I can see machine marks on might be the top of this slide right here. But it's very light and it looks symmetrical, so maybe that is intended. This is their version 2 slide. And when they asked me what pistol I wanted to review, I tried to pick one that was as far away from your standard Glock as possible to kind of see all of the different options and what they can create. So obviously the colors are different, stainless steel, and being the version 2 slide, you have all these serrations, you have the lightning cuts on the side of the slide, and look at the front of that barrel. That thing looks really mean. I like how they have put a deep recess in the front of that slide. The controls here also seem to be matching in color and high quality. We have a silver magazine release and a mag well. It appears that the guide rod is stainless steel as well. So yep, it looks like it does have that, and it looks like it can come apart if you want to replace the spring. That is really neat. We'll take this apart in just a second. But just my initial thoughts on this is that it feels pretty good. In my hand, it feels high quality, seems to be well built. Nothing is shaking or concerns me at all. In my hand with this flat back strap, it feels pretty good. The only issue I have with this, and this is my general issue with the Glock 19 overall, is the fact that the stock is always a little bit short. On the standard Glock 19s, especially the ones with the moon cut out here in the front, it always rubs on my pinky. But here with this magwell, my pinky kind of rubs on that just a little bit, but that's just because my hands are so big. I just kind of have fat fingers, and that's just something that I have to deal with. I do like the flat backstrap option on this, but if you do prefer the curved, they do offer that as well. But I think I'm going to keep and shoot this gun just as it came out of the box. Now, anything that would fit on a Glock is supposed to fit on this. All right, so let's take this thing apart and see internally what it looks like. So as always, you want to safety check the pistol. So let's drop the magazine, make sure it is empty. Let's rack the slide and visually inspect the chamber. Nothing is in there. And on a Glock, you do have to pull the trigger. And I believe this is going to come apart just like your standard Glock. And lo and behold, it does. So let's take a look here at the frame first. Everything in the frame looks pretty normal. Looks like it is all Glock compatible. Now, when I do look at this, I can tell that these components are not made by Glock because these are chrome plated. You have the trigger bar here, looks like the sear in the back, that's chrome plated. I'm not used to seeing that, and it has no other numbers on it. And from the side here, I can see in the trigger mechanism, it does have Lone Wolf Distributors logo in there. So that's all got to be theirs as well. Something that is interesting is that this is supposed to be a Generation 3 clone, but yet it has this little nub on the trigger bar, which was kind of popular in the Gen 4 Glocks. I'm not really sure why they added that, or maybe they think it adds stability to that trigger bar as it moves with inside the slide. But everything else looks pretty darn good. I mean, it looks like everything Glock's going to fit on this. So pretty happy with that frame. And the only Glock part on this that I think I can see maybe is this slide stop, if that is stock. Everything else looks like it is aftermarket. All right, let's take a look at this slide now. So here is the recoil spring. It looks like you can definitely take that apart. And it is captive like a standard Glock, and it is stainless steel, and the spring is flat, so it's a flat spring. I do like that. Barrel, it is marked with their logo, 19x9, no other markings. I like the finish on it. It's kind of a matte finish, stainless steel. The crown on this barrel doesn't look like it's very pronounced, but I don't think that's going to matter too much. Let me look through it here and see if this is going to be polygonal or kind of lands and grooves. It is definitely lands and grooves. So you can use all of your reloads on this. So this is going to be very similar to the Glock Marksman barrel. Now here on the slide, everything looks normal. It has the Gen 3 type of striker safety. The Gen 4s and Gen 5s, they're shaped a little bit different. It looks like the striker assembly is a little bit different as well. This looks chrome plated, or maybe it's stainless steel, and the insert is white instead of black. So I know all of those internal components there are not Glock OEM. So this is truly a Glock clone, probably made here in the US. And all these different parts are different. There's a nice addition here. It's this back plate that kind of matches the style of the gun. And as I mentioned, maybe the only Glock parts I can see on this that would be OEM would be the sights, because those definitely look like Glock sights. Maybe the extractor. That looks like a Glock extractor. Maybe not, because I can see some different types of machine marks that I'm not used to seeing on that. So that might be a US made part, but those sights I'm almost 100% sure are Glock. But everything else on this definitely looks different and US made. Feels high quality. I really think this is a very attractive looking slide. All right, so let's put this Glock back together here. And then we're going to dry fire it and see what the trigger feels like. All right, so let me readjust the camera and we'll test out this trigger. Well, so far this gun feels and looks really good. I mean, for those people that take Glocks and upgrade them, I could definitely see building something like this with a lot of aftermarket parts and just upgrading your stock Glock, but you get this right out of the box. I'm really impressed with how this looks, how it feels. So far, I would have to say that this is probably a pretty darn good value. Something else I'm noticing is it has a really nice undercut here underneath the trigger guard. A lot of people will actually carve that out when they have their gun stippled just to have a more comfortable feel. This is the way that this frame comes. And it does say this is the TWC3 frame, which I believe stands for Timberwolf Compact version 3. But don't quote me on that, but that's what I believe it means. All right, so let's do a little dry firing and see how this thing feels. So let me come over here, and feeling this trigger has a little bit of take up. Now, one thing I really like about Glocks is how consistent they are from model to model. Like almost every Glock trigger feels the same. This one I think feels a little bit heavier and a little bit mushier, but you get to that wall where you know it's going to break. Has exactly the same sound and feel. And let's test the reset now. Well, that's a kind of a shorter reset than you normally get on a Glock, and you're right there at the wall. All right, I like that. Very short reset, tactile and audible, and you're at the wall again. One more time. That's pretty good. And now here is the full length pull. So that mushy take up. All right, so that's what it looks like and what it sounds like. I have to say that I think that after the reset, this trigger is better than a Glock, just by a little bit. But the initial take up might be a little bit mushier than your standard Glock. But it's not bad. It's kind of what you would expect. It does feel Glock-ish. It just is a little bit mushy on that initial take up, but after the reset, that's definitely shorter and you're right at the wall. So when you're shooting multiple times, that's kind of how I like to shoot, is riding that reset. So I think this stock trigger in this gun is probably going to be pretty good. Very attractive, as I said, well built. I like what I see. So I guess that's kind of my initial thoughts and impressions. The slide with those serrations, you get a lot of grippy surface. And the grip texture reminds me a lot of the Glock Gen 4 style, where you have those little pyramids. So far, so good. So let's get this thing to the range and see what my initial thoughts are after I put some rounds through it. All right, so for my first shots, I'm pretty happy. This thing definitely does shoot like a Glock. And how do I know that? It shoots low and to the left for me. I shoot all Glocks that way, so this thing definitely has that going for it. I also noticed that this mag well is not as intrusive as I thought. It's definitely more comfortable than that half moon cut you get on some of the Glock 19s, but this was comfortable, pretty nice, didn't really get in the way. Something else I noticed was the recoil impulse of this gun. It's actually a little bit lighter than other Glocks. But this is something I'm going to talk about later in the range report because it might be an issue because of the recoil spring. But overall, the gun feels pretty darn good. Well, I'm going to do what I always do and now move to an accuracy portion of the test. Now remember guys, I am not an expert shot, I'm not an expert marksman, I don't do competitive shooting, I don't do trick shots, I am just an average gun guy. So I'm now going to set the silhouette target at 12 yards, about twice the distance as I had it before, and I'm going to go for the head and see if this group opens up. Alright, so not a bad group, but not a great group either. I actually had to kind of walk that in. I started really low and to the left and had to bring that up. I can compensate for it just because I know how this gun shoots and how I shoot Glocks. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the accuracy. I'm very familiar with these stock Glock sights, so it shoots exactly like I would expect it to. One of the things that my wife, who was filming, noticed, because we had actually shot her Glock 19 before shooting this, she noticed that this was a lot louder. The report of this gun, for some reason, is just a little bit more than a standard Glock. I don't know if that means anything, but it was something that we did notice. It was not something that I would say somebody that is not just shooting Glocks side by side would notice, but it's something that we noticed at the range. So I thought that I would pass that information on. But now, speaking of my wife, I'm going to give her a shot. She loves her Glock 19. In fact, I have it out here on the table because I'm going to be comparing it in just a moment. But we were shooting that, and so I know she loves that gun. So I thought she would like this one. So let's get her thoughts and see what she thinks. Alright, so my wife obviously is getting some ejection issues here. The spent brass is coming back in her face, it's kind of dribbling out the side, and even sometimes it's ejecting to the left. So what in the world can this mean? Well, obviously she could be limp wristing it a little bit. I'm going to give her another shot at this, but normally she doesn't do this. She is really good with semi-automatic pistols. She knows not to limp wrist. So it could be the recoil spring being a little bit too sprung. We could have an extractor issue or an extractor spring issue. I think those are the most likely culprits. But we're going to try this again. Now that Becky kind of knows how this gun shoots, how it feels, she's going to be very aware of this. So I'm going to give her another shot and another magazine. Let's see if the ejection pattern gets any better.
Oh, that one's really hot.
Alright, so we're still having some ejection issues. It's still doing the exact same thing. And the ejection sometimes will be really strong. In fact, one of those went right over her head at the 6 o'clock position and went all the way to the back of the range. But the gun, for the most part, is ejecting sometimes to the 3 to the 4 o'clock position pretty weak, and always on the last round of the magazine, it ejects either forward or to the left. After this happened, I went back and reviewed the footage of myself shooting, and I did notice it was having some pretty weak ejection as well, and the cartridge would eject to the left on the last round. So I was having that issue too, but I didn't notice it in my first 2 tries of shooting this gun. But now that I'm aware of it, I'm going to put some more rounds. This is just to see if this gun is going to break in a little bit more, and just to see now that I am aware of what it's doing, I'm going to watch it as I shoot and see what happens. I think I'm just going to put about 5 rounds and see if maybe it's myself or something that I can do, hold the gun a certain way, hold it really steady, and see if that ejection pattern gets any better. Alright, so I'm still having some weak ejection issues, and I know some of you guys are going to ask. I am using Federal 124 grain ball ammunition for this test. So I'm curious about what's causing this. As I mentioned, we have a few culprits. I've pretty much eliminated limp wristing. So it's going to be the recoil spring, the extractor, or the extractor spring. But now that I've gotten to shoot the gun and handle the gun a little bit more, I started to compare it to the other Glock 19s that I own. And I noticed that I believe the recoil spring on this is a little bit more sprung than the others. So I brought out all 3 of the Glock 19s or Glock 19 style guns that I have. Obviously here I have my wife's Glock 19. When I pull this slide back, and I know this is kind of qualitative and I have nothing to measure it, so you just kind of have to believe me here. I know how much force this is taking to pull this slide back. When I use my personal Glock 19 Gen 5 MOS, now this one does have the dual recoil spring in it, it's about the same, maybe just a little bit heavier than my wife's. But here on the Lone Wolf, when I pull the slide back, this is considerably heavier. Not a lot, but I can definitely tell a difference. So it makes me wonder if the recoil spring is just too sprung. Sometimes they're going to put an overpowered recoil spring. In fact, you can buy overpowered recoil springs from companies like Wolf Springs. No, they're not related to Lone Wolf, but from Wolf Springs. So maybe that's what they have done here, and this gun requires a little bit of a break-in period. I had the same issue with my Beretta APX. When I first took it to the range, I had extremely weak ejections. Everybody after my range report said, go back to the range, shoot it some more, especially put some NATO-powered ammunition through it. It will break in and it will shoot better. And they were absolutely right. So maybe this requires a little bit of a break-in period. But I kind of think right out of the box, we shouldn't be having these ejection issues, especially with standard factory-loaded ammunition. But we're going to continue shooting this and see if it gets any better. I'm now going to go to the portion of the test I like to refer to as the defensive use. Essentially, I'm going to load 5 rounds in each magazine. I'm going to see if this magwell aids in a quick reload. I'm going to shoot this gun relatively fast, or fast for me, with a quick reload, see if I can get all the shots on target and if I have any issues. Alright, so that actually went pretty well and pretty fast. The magwell works as advertised. But I did have one little hesitation, and that had to do with the slide release or the slide stop. I've gotten into a habit of when I insert a fresh magazine, I pull the slide back and let it go home. But I had totally forgotten that on Glocks, these are slide releases, which means you can drop the slide with simply an action of the thumb. And this gun does come with an extended slide release. And so I caught my thumb on that, and it gave me a little bit of a hesitation. But now that I remember this gun has that, I'm going to try this defensive use again, and this time I'm only going to use the slide release. Now sometimes people will say using the slide release can actually cause a little bit of issue when you have to do a fast reload, and that pulling the slide back is the better way, but I'm going to try it with just the slide release and see if I can increase my reload time. very interesting issue. All right, so my reload time was a little bit better, so I think either way you do it, you're going to be absolutely fine. It's a very easy magazine to drop, to reinsert, and get the gun back in action, especially if you're going to conceal carry this and carry an extra magazine. Now, if you notice, I did have a malfunction on that last round, so I'm really getting weak ejection on that last round. My gut is telling me that the recoil spring is too sprung. It's just too powerful. It couldn't even eject it on that last one. And maybe the slide is not even going fully back when it recoils. And that's why in my first shooting video I mentioned the gun is not recoiling as heavy as other Glock 19s just because that recoil spring is so sprung. But that's preventing the slide from going all the way back and having enough force to pull that cartridge out of the gun every single time. I mentioned I had a very similar issue on my Beretta APX, but that was an extractor issue. So I'm going to run 25 more rounds through this, through 2 magazines, just to see if I can get this gun to break in. For the most part, it's running pretty well and pretty reliable. I've really only had one major malfunction, and you just saw it. It just has some weak ejection. So here's 25 rounds. Let's just see if we can break this thing in and make it run any better. Alright, so after putting 150 rounds through this gun on this particular range trip, I'm still getting weak ejection. So maybe it just does need to be broken in. I know some of you are going to say, why didn't I change the recoil spring? After all, this is a Glock Gen 3. Well, I have other Glock Gen 3s. Well, the truth is I always want to review the gun as I get it, as it is lent to me or given to the channel. I don't want to change anything because as an average gun person who may be looking to buy this gun, this is the gun you are going to get out of the box. And I have an expectation it is going to run a particular way when I take it to the range the first time. So I don't want to change anything and skew those results. If I have to buy a gun and the first thing I do is change a bunch of parts on it to make it run right, well, that, in my opinion, is not a quality gun. Now, this gun did run well. It just has that weak ejection issue. So maybe after shooting hundreds of rounds through this, that recoil spring is going to get a little bit better and run just fine. It just has to be broken in and used a little bit more. And I'm definitely going to continue to take this to the range and enjoy it. It feels really good in my hand. It shoots like a Glock 19. I think it just needs to be broken in, and if I still have issues, probably after a few more 100 rounds, I'm probably going to change the recoil spring to a Glock OEM spring and see if that changes anything, and I'll keep you guys updated. So what are my final thoughts on the Lone Wolf LTD19 Glock 19 clone? Well, I gotta say, I'm really impressed with a number of things about this gun. First, cosmetically, I think this is a really cool gun. It looks really neat. I think they've done a great job with the color. This particular model, of course, has the stainless slide and barrel with those cool lightning cuts and that really awesome front end. Look at that muzzle once again. That's kind of mean looking, kind of space age, but mean looking. You can definitely tell it is a Glock, but it's not a Glock. And so maybe this is something that someone who is interested in a Glock style gun but don't want the tactical Tupperware, I guess we'll call it, this is definitely an option for you. It's going to be a little bit more expensive than your standard Glock, but I think you get a lot of upgrades with it. So if you're going to buy a Glock 19 and then go ahead and buy some type of aftermarket slide anyway, I think you probably get a better value with this. As for the frame, I think it's pretty nice. In some ways I like it, and in some ways I prefer the Glock OEM ones. But in general, I like how small this one feels. I have no problems with it. It has a nice grippy surface, and I think it would just have to be personal preference. But I definitely like this, and I like the fact as someone that shoots Glocks a lot, this is something that is a little bit different. I like the fact they definitely don't have the finger grooves. Not really a huge fan of the finger grooves on many of the Glock pistols. I do like that flat front strap. That's just something I just kind of prefer. Trigger in this feels like a Glock, the gun shoots like a Glock, and it is compatible with all other Glock accessories. So I think if you're someone that doesn't want to have a Glock, but wants a Glock, if you know what I mean. So you don't want to be seen with the typical blocky tactical Tupperware, but like something that has a huge aftermarket that looks kind of neat and different and space age, this would definitely be the way to go. As for the performance of this gun, the gun is very accurate. For me, it shoots like a regular Glock. Function-wise, the gun only had one hiccup, and we've already talked about why I think that is. Everything else about the gun is running fine. I just need to get that recoil spring or the extractor spring issue solved. But for the most part, it ran reliably. So out of 150 rounds, I had one malfunction. That's still better than a 99% function rate. But I know if you're going to carry this gun for personal protection, you want something as close to 100% as possible. So maybe if you bought one of these, you want to take it to the range and test it out thoroughly to make sure you don't have the same issues this one is having. But overall, I think you get a lot of gun for your money. I think it's a cool idea. It's a Glock that's not a Glock, and cosmetically, it looks pretty darn awesome. So, on my rating system, how would I rate the LTD19 by Lone Wolf? Well, I have to be honest in these reviews, and I told you in the beginning of this video, this gun was given to the channel from Lone Wolf. But I have to be honest, and I always review the guns as I get them. Because I'm having this weird ejection issue, I'm only able to give this gun 3 stars out of 5. I know that probably taints my channel forever and means I will never get another free product, but I have to be honest because the people I need to be honest with the most is you as my viewers and subscribers, someone that's buying this gun. Now, do I think this is a reliable gun? Absolutely. Do I think it's a high quality gun? Absolutely. But this particular example just has that weak ejection issue. Now, is that something that you can change out and overcome? Yes. But I do expect it to run 100% out of the box and have better ejection than what it does. But everything else about the gun, I think exceeded my expectations. So if this thing had strong ejections, this thing was easily going to be 4.75 stars out of 5. But the fact I did have the malfunction, the fact that it was ejecting so weak, hit my wife in the face, and kind of got into her clothes. I know that kind of sounds a little dirty. Dirty Glock, or Dirty Lone Wolf Glock clone. I'm just going to have to give it a lower rating, just because of that issue. I had it, and my wife had it. But overall, I think all of the components that go into this are really, really high quality. One more thing before I close out this video is I have gotten this home and I have cleaned it thoroughly. I see nothing in this gun that is wearing incorrectly. So for example, you do have a little bit of wear on the barrel hood, but all of the other Glock 19s I have that same wear mark. You also get the very famous Glock smile on this barrel as well. So nothing in this gun is saying, hey, something is out of spec, something is hitting on each other, something is wrong. Everything looks like it's functioning normally and like it should. I will say too, is as I took the gun apart, I think I was wrong. I think the only thing that ships with this gun that is Glock's beside the sights is the magazine. All of the other internal parts, as I was able to inspect them side by side with real Glock OEM parts, they're different. Even the striker assembly and all of the different bushings that go into the gun. So I really hand it to them for making a Glock clone from non-Glock parts, so good on them. So there you go. I know this has been an extremely long video, but I wanted to be as thorough as I possibly could. So what do you guys think? 3 out of 5 stars for the LTD19 from Lone Wolf. Very attractive offering. I think you get a lot of gun for your money, and I think this gun is probably going to be pretty reliable. And of course, you have that huge aftermarket support for it. But it just didn't eject strongly enough for me, and I had a few issues and that one hiccup. And I documented it all here on the Range Report. So what do you guys think? Do you guys own a Lone Wolf LTD19? Have you had any issues with it? I would love to know in the comments section below, and I hope you guys think that this was an unbiased review. I did my very best to document everything and tell you all the terms. So there you go. So let me know in the comments section below what you think, and if you watched to the end of the video, I want you to do me a favor. Type in the comments section the word nice, because you guys are really nice and I think this gun is really nice. It just lets me know that you were patient enough to listen to me babble for this insane amount of time. So use the word nice in the comments. I'd like to know how many people watched to the end. So there you go. So let me know if you have any questions. And thank you, Lone Wolf, for giving me the opportunity to try out this gun. So as always, thanks for watching.
I felt like Joe Biden. What happened?